Right. Welcome. I can see people are starting to filter in. We'll get started in a couple minutes here, but if you'd like to just leave a note in the chat to let us know where you're joining from. I'm joining from sunny Austin, Texas. I think our high today is, yep, we're in the 80s. All right, lots of goods all around, all across the country here. So you've got Spokane, Washington, overcast and 60 in Nampa, Idaho, Brooklyn, California, Boston, New York, Utah. Wow, we're catching all of the states. Atlanta, Georgia, also in the 80s over there. Spring I feel like is finally starting to actually spring up in places. Some places it's happening, I think, a little too quickly. In other places, I think, I've got family up in the Northeast and they're all very ready for it to be warm and sunny again. Just going to give it another minute here because sometimes there can be logistics with people getting in. Milwaukee, 43 degrees. See, this is why I can't do it. I can't do it that far north. I went through Wisconsin maybe like 5, 6 years ago, and it's beautiful up there. But I went in the summer, and I think it sucks you in. It's like gorgeous and green and sunny, and then it's 43 degrees in March. All right, cloudy in Ventura, California as well. All righty, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jocelyn Wright. I'm our Associate Director of Community and Market Development here at Six Red Marbles. We're so happy you all are here. So there have been some big changes happening, in higher education these days. Lots of talk about the enrollment pipeline, how that's shrinking, employer demand for skilled talent intensifying, and more institutions are creating programs for adult learners to meet this demand. And today I'm really excited to talk with an organization who's been way, way ahead of this curve. Whitworth University has been offering accelerated programs for quite some time. And Six Red Marbles had the opportunity to partner with Whitworth starting last year to convert their in-person accelerated programs to online. So these online courses, most are 6 weeks. We've got a few that are 12 weeks, and they're all for adult learners. So far, we've worked together to build out programs in business, general education, teacher certification, and human services. But I'm really excited now to introduce our project team, and we will start with the folks at Whitworth.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Brooke Kiner. I'm the Dean for Whitworth Online.
And I'm Megan Helton. I'm the Assistant Dean for Whitworth Online. Happy to be here today.
And last but not least, we have our Marble project lead.
Hi, I'm Juanita Fralin, and I'm the lead working with Brooke and Megan, getting these courses online and accelerated.
All right. So before we dive into Whitworth's experiences, I'd like to start with a quick little poll. We're curious where all of you are in this accelerated courses journey. So you'll see this poll popping up here. This is on Slido. And I think there should be a link that you use to answer the poll, but we want to know, does your institution offer accelerated courses? Looks like we might have been having some trouble with our Slido platform. If you want to just tell me in the chat, that works too. We try to get the rest online. Technical difficulties.
Always something.
It's always something. We can do all this fun stuff with technology, but it never quite does what we want it to in the moment when we really ask it to be there for us.
Always got to have a plan B.
All right.
Jocelyn shared.
We're getting some responses in the chat here. I'm seeing a yes, we're starting in August. Also, mini-semesters, miscellaneous parts of term, 7 to 8 week online courses for 15 to 20 years. All right, I think you'll find yourself in good company here with the group at Whitworth. 2-year degree completion at San Francisco State, another yes. Offering now, but making an effort to move more. And I think Tiffany might have just dropped the link to the Slido poll there. But let's see what else have we got here. Yes, if you mean a course offered, yeah, that's actually a great clarification. Yeah, when we're talking about accelerated courses, we're talking about something that's offered, yes, in fewer weeks than a typical semester. I'm seeing here we've tried to move offering classes in 8-week options within our full 16 weeks as well. So great. So it seems like we've got a lot of people in the room who have some real experience with accelerated course design and/or some interest in doing more of it. So that's great. I think you'll find you have a lot to learn from Brooke and Megan and their experiences with that. So with that, let's learn a little bit more about Whitworth, and no better people to tell us about it than Brooke and Megan. So just can you tell me a little bit more about Whitworth Online, and especially like what makes it stand out? What makes it unique? What makes it different?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for asking us to be a part of this webinar today. We've had a wild ride with our move to fully online instruction over the course of the last, it's been about a year now. And Six Red Marbles has been there since the very beginning and every step of the way, and we could not have done it without y'all. So really just grateful in this moment to be sharing what has worked about this collaboration and how transformative it's been for us with a larger audience. So the Whitworth Online used to be called the School of Continuing Studies. Before that, it was the Department of Continuing Studies. Before that, it's been many things, but we've had adult learning programs for over 100 years at Whitworth. And they've always been kind of centralized away from the rest of the sort of university proper. So Whitworth is mostly a traditional undergraduate liberal arts residential campus, but we've always had this commitment to adult learners, and we've always tried to centralize services, programs, learning opportunities for those adult learners in one unit. I've only been dean for about 3 years, so it's very hard for me to take credit for anything at this point, and I like to try to always give crazy amounts of credit to the incredible deans and program directors who came before me. But we've been in an accelerated format for over 30 years. So in the late 90s, the leadership at the time made some really significant structural changes that enabled me to do what needed to be done when I came on as dean 3 years ago. So they set up our accelerated calendar. So it's a separate calendar. We operate on our own calendar at the university that has 3 trimesters, so the fall, the spring, and the summer. And we run 6-week courses, one at a time, within that 18-week fall, 18-week spring, and then we do a 12-week summer. So all of that was already in place when I came in. For a long time, we were called Whitworth in the Evening, and we have always been for working adults or folks who are already career embedded and in that kind of non-traditional age group or demographic. And we were in the evenings and on weekends. So we were running 6-week courses that met twice per week, and 2 Saturdays, 2 long 8-hour Saturdays, trying to get all that seat time in within that 6-week time frame. And when I came in, our enrollment had been struggling, and the pandemic had hit, and we wondered if we were going to recover. And then it became really clear that nationally the trend was towards fully online programs. And there were now a whole lot of those available. And an enrollment pipeline that had been really steady for the university was suddenly, we were about to no longer break even. We had been contributing a significant profit margin to the university's overall general ledger. And for the first time in our history, that was going to be not true anymore. We were going to be costing the university money. So there was a desperate need to get back some of that audience that we had lost because we had remained in person while the rest of the world had moved to fully online. So we decided we needed to be online, and we needed to get there as quickly as we could. We identified resources to do that. And the first thing I did was hire 6 Red Marbles to help us move all of our programs, our adult degree completion programs, to fully online delivery. We have 4 main programs. We have a teacher certification program. It can be done as both a BA in elementary ed or a post-bac cert only option. We have a degree in human services that has some concentrations in things like counseling, child and family services, public administration. And then we have a business management that also has several concentrations in things like digital marketing, human resources. And then we have kind of a catch-all degree. It's an interdisciplinary studies. It's the degree that it works great for adults who have a bunch of scattered credits and need to find a way to package them as a degree. So we do some independent study, a big capstone project that allows them to synthesize across those domains. So that's us in a nutshell. Megan, did I miss anything?
You got it. You got it.
Done it a few times. Yeah.
So Juanita, you have been a project lead for all kinds of different course development projects throughout your long career at 6 Red Marbles, and you've been the project lead on the Whitworth project from the beginning. I'm curious, from your perspective, having seen so many different organizations bringing courses online and working with online course development, what really stood out to you about working with Whitworth?
That's a really good question. So I would say one of the main elements that's been different is the interweaving of faith and ethics into the curriculum. That's not something that is a standard. And so, like, especially for the general education program, it was very intentionally interwoven within the curriculum. And I would say, as a lead, I don't always get to actually work with the faculty and the SMEs directly. A lot of times I'm sort of managing the instructional design team, working on a lot of like program planning and background stuff. But I've been able to work with several of the faculty on a business management course, and also on a general ed course. So I think like having that hands-on experience has been invaluable. And then the last thing, but definitely not the least thing, would be just from day one, having so much collaboration with Brooke and Megan, and the program directors. I couldn't have asked for a better team. So it's just been since day one, we've been really working together synergetically. I can't.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Synergistically to
finish each
ensure
other's
that
words.
all of the requirements are being met, and it's been a wild ride.
And we've just been so grateful to have Juanita on every single one of she's been our lead the whole time, which has been such a massive cost savings and kind of energy savings for us. Like, to be able to, we don't have to re-educate a new project lead each time about who we are and how we do things and what's important and what our reflect, explore, apply framework is. And yeah, so that's been a huge advantage.
Been a really, really great partnership so far. And there is, a lot that is special about Whitworth. And, one of those things being that Whitworth is a Christian university that's dedicated to its founding mission of providing an education of both mind and heart, which I love the way of putting that. So can you tell us about how courses in Whitworth online align with this faith-based mission?
Yeah, Megan's going to
Yes,
take this one.
I can take that one. So Whitworth is a Christian university. We do not require our students to be Christian or to have any particular faith tradition, but it's a part of this aspect of who we are that we can bring into the virtual classroom, to the Zoom room, however we're meeting, to talk about that component. And we do want to weave those matters of the heart into our courses so that our courses are reflecting the mission and vision of the broader university, and really capturing what does it mean to be Whitworth in a different setting. And that's a big part of that. And it looks different with different courses. I mean, some courses it's pretty obvious how to integrate because the class is a Bible class. So that comes together seamlessly. But even in those types of courses, we want to leave that space for students from a lot of different faith traditions or from no faith tradition, to have that content be accessible and to be able to apply it to their lives in a way that is authentic for themselves as well. But then there's other courses where it might not be an obvious connection, like perhaps it's business or education, but the ways that we weave that in, it might be looking at ethics. How do your ethics play out? Or identifying what are some of your core values and how is that going to shape you as an educator or in this particular profession? What's important to you? And so what's been really remarkable about working with Six Red Marbles is they've been open to having a lot of those conversations and and navigating that nuance of let's bring this aspect of who we are to the classroom, so that we're true to our mission as a university while also honoring the autonomy and the breadth of perspectives that exist amongst our student body. So yeah.
It's fantastic.
Any
Thank
more
you,
on that,
Megan.
Rick?
I did see a quick, I think, just question come in about Whitworth and the courses that we're talking about today, specifically whether they're all credit-bearing courses or they're also non-credit-bearing courses in the mix.
We also have a Department of Certificate and Professional Education that offers non-credit professional development opportunities. Most of those are bundled as certificates. They're not usually standalone course, or I guess that would, anyway, whatever lexicon you want to use. Yes, we do offer non-credit stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to get that question out there and answered. So I also think it's worth talking about the general education course program because that to me really stood out. I really hadn't seen anything like it before. And I know one of the biggest things that you were working on was changing the total number of courses and really prioritizing that intentional course experience for the learners. But that's hard to do. So like, what kind of things did you prioritize when you made these changes? And, how did you determine what really needed to be in that final program?
Yeah. So Whitworth's general education curriculum is not particularly unique. It's very much in the tradition of the liberal arts gen ed experience that you want students to have a broad-ranging education with exposure to various disciplines across the arts and humanities. So we have the usual sort of, box checking requirements. What we do that is perhaps sort of unique to us, we have a specific framework and a set of shared learning outcomes that have to be assessed in all of our gen ed courses. And they follow this framework that I mentioned earlier of explore, reflect, apply. The idea there really is that you learn new content and you digest that content, you reflect on it, you make meaning from it, and then you're able to apply it in some way. So within our degree completion programs, we have almost the exact same set of requirements. We just have one kind of difference that is tweaked specifically for adult learners. So we don't do a 1-credit, like first-year seminar. We do a full 3-credit course that, helps adult learners kind of transition back into school. We call it the Flourishing Mind. And then we also don't need to require PE credits. So those are that's the context here. The other context is some schools don't allow what you would call double dipping, where one class can count as both a major requirement and a gen ed requirement, but we do allow for that. So I looked at our curriculum across our degree programs and I said, where is that overlap already existing and where can we, kind of solidify that as a pattern so that then I can build a set of gen ed courses that are widely applicable to all students. And because I was essentially eliminating, a wide variety of gen ed courses that students could choose from, like we were only going to have one of each, essentially, right? Because it's expensive to build these. And so for the short term, we were like one of each. I really wanted those courses to be very tangible and relevant to the lived career embedded experiences of our adult learners, and for them to have some strong interdisciplinary approach to to topics, ideas, big questions. I actually really struggled to get that fully approved by our faculty through our typical governance system because they just didn't know how to create a framework for assessing an equivalent amount of time spent on science if you're getting some of it here, some of it here, some of it here. Like they we got stuck at that point. So we had to rework, but we tried to keep as much of that as we could while still maintaining that this is the class where they learn the science. For instance. So does that answer the question? In terms of like what's unique and how we thought about that, we needed to not offer a whole bunch. And so given the task of only being able to offer like 10, one for each box that needs to be checked, how can I get the most juice out of that one, those 10 courses? How could I create an experience for our adult learners that really made sense and in a codified, cohesive kind of way? Yeah, that's what we were shooting for.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example, and really speaks to kind of the choices that you have to make both when you're designing for an adult learner and when you're designing in an accelerated format.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that adult learner. So, as you mentioned, Brooke, Whitworth Online is for working adults. And this next question is actually for Juanita, in that I'm curious about kind of the design choices that were made from an instructional design perspective. What did you do to meet this learner type where they were and kind of really address their specific needs? What kinds of design choices did you bake into the courses?
So again, going back to the, what Brooke was saying, like these learners, they need to really like apply the skills. So whatever we're building into the curriculum, it has to be immediately relevant and transferable skills that they can apply to their work immediately and really like, have that that transfer the skills that they're learning into their job. And then also they're just coming from lots of different backgrounds. So they have a lot of lived experience. So being able to like understand that they're looking to fill a skills gap or they're changing careers, and keeping all of that in mind, while we're also, thinking about the requirements for seat time, national and state accreditation standards. So really just keeping all of that front of mind when we're designing specifically for these learners.
It's great. Yeah, that's a lot of different things to juggle.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really important to us is that we had a really consistent template for all of our courses, and that, I mean, we talked about at the beginning a lot about the cognitive load, the way that, you know, a working adult at the end of the day, when they're squeezing their class time and their homework time into after the kids go to bed, or on the weekend before the kids wake up, or, you know, Sunday night before the work week starts, that we don't want any cognitive energy wasted on trying to find the reading, right? Or trying to figure out how the assignment is going to be graded. Like, we just wanted a really consistent experience around as much of that we could control as possible, so that what little energy they had left, they could really put towards learning tasks.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing with adults, you know, and really kind of being mindful about that and thoughtful about that is really critical. So I'd like to move us to talk about accelerated courses more. We're getting some questions about that in the Q&A. Before we kind of dive into that, I wanted a perspective on the challenges and opportunities in accelerated course design from our group here. So we're going to give Slido another go. See how it works for us this time. I think Tiffany just dropped a link for everyone in the chat with the number that you'll just put in after you click on that link. And the question we have is, in your experience, what is the biggest challenge with accelerated courses? And you have fun choices like faculty workload and grading turnaround, maintaining academic rigor, student persistence and completion, aligning courses to workforce outcomes, and I'm not sure, and that makes it really tough on its own. So you can answer right in Slido. It should be collecting our responses, or you can feel free to drop your perspective in the chat if that's easier for you.
I'm so eager to see the results on this one, to see if our challenges line up with everybody else's challenges.
See, the code is 3130687. That's 3130687. I think I should be able to bring this content on screen. We can start seeing the results as they come in. So it looks like the major winner is maintaining academic rigor, followed by student persistence and completion, which we were just talking about. I see another vote just came in for academic rigor. Oh, student persistence is catching up. This is like a horse race or something. You see who's going to win in the end. And then, of course, aligning courses to workforce outcomes. So we'll definitely touch on those things as we dig into accelerated course design a little bit, and anything that we don't cover in the next couple minutes, we invite you to ask during the Q&A. So I guess I'll just start with Brooke and Megan. Whitworth has been doing this for a long time. You have a lot of experience with this. Do you agree with you know, kind of those challenges, and what's the most important thing from your perspective to ensure that the online accelerated course format is engaging for students?
Yeah, Megan, what do you think? Do our challenges align with the challenges in the Slido poll?
Yeah, they do. I feel like the engagement question is maybe a little bit different than the rigor question, which I saw as one of the leading challenges. So I'm going to address the rigor piece. We've had a lot of conversations about defining what do we mean by rigor, and is academic rigor the sheer quantity of work, or is it the quality of the work? And so our starting point is always looking at the learning outcomes. What are the learning outcomes of this course? How do they align with the institutional learning outcomes, the program learning outcomes, and the course itself? And making sure that we're teaching to those outcomes, so that becomes the guiding the guide, which aligns so well with the way that Six Wood Marbles designs. Everything is structured, starting with those objectives, those learning outcomes, and building out the assessments from there. But when I think of rigor, I also think of depth of engagement. I would rather have two really deeply engaging, critical thinking assignments than 6 surface level assignments, right? And so that's where we can be incredibly thoughtful with the course design and the selection of the assessments and the reading. Do we need to read 3 chapters of something, or do we need to read one carefully selected chapter? And so having that focus on what is going to have the deepest engagement, and align with the outcomes the best, because students will self-select what they end up doing. If there's, if there's this massive amount of reading, they're going to end up selecting what do they read closely, what do they not. And so if we can be intentional about let's focus on these things and then ask questions, have assessments that cause them to do a deeper dive into that, that leads to the higher level thinking, greater application, the overall rigor, beyond a focus of, well, in a full semester course, they did this number of assignments, therefore they must do that number of assignments in a 6-week. That's not alignment in terms of rigor. It's the learning outcomes. It's the depth of engagement. What do you have to add, Brooke?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And I was thinking about how in higher ed, there's sort of like 2 options, right? Like you can determine that it's a college course that is worth 3 credits because it meets for this number of hours, and it assigns an amount of work that we would consider generically to take 2 additional hours per course hour, right? Or you can be competency based. You can say we're after mastery, and once a student demonstrates mastery, they've earned the credit. And the field of higher ed leans hard in the direction of the credit hour model, right? And so it's just embedded in our culture. It's just and when as a campus, that's your model, you have to try to figure out a way to fit in that, even though we all know that like it would take me a different amount of time to do an assignment than it would take someone else. Like that to create a standardized way of determining like time on task is we don't actually spend any conversation, have any conversation about what we think that standard amount is, or what we, and how many standard deviations away from the mean that we're willing to go, So, so you make it work, right? You make it work, and you make your case, and you try to help people understand all of the students in my program are, they have full-time internships that they get paid for, right? But so they're applying their learning and immediately, and that's a deeper learning experience than just absorbing content and recreating it in some kind of applied way. It's when you're embedded in your career already, and you're in a professional program that is meant to help you excel within that career, you need a different learning experience. So we always try to go back to, whenever I find myself in those wrestling matches, just go back to who is the student that we're designing for and what do they need?
It's a really important guiding principle. We've been talking about cognitive load, or kind of that effort for the student. And Juanita, I would love your perspective on this one. How did you and the team approach course design to ensure that you were balancing cognitive load and generally making the accelerated format, manageable while maintaining rigor and all of the other important things that we've spoken about? How did you do that from a course design perspective?
So there's a lot of planning involved. And as Brooke alluded to, we spent a lot of time redesigning and rethinking the Canvas course shell, and very intentionally, thinking about reducing cognitive load by making everything from week to week very consistent, from course to course, and having different modalities. So if I'm don't have my computer with me, I can print out all of this week's assignments and readings and have a sort of a checklist that I can go through and sort of prioritize. So just trying to make everything as manageable as possible in the LMS, but then also having a lot of like downloadable resources that you could use, if you're not at your computer. Um, yeah, I would just say really like consistency is really important to reduce the cognitive load because again, these students might be coming to the course after a long day of work or feeding the kids or putting the kids to sleep, and they really want like they can jump in and they know exactly what to do, and there's no like from course to course like things are dramatically different. I think that really helps with reducing the cognitive load.
Those are some great strategies, Juanita. I'm seeing a lot of questions come in, which is great. So I think we can officially open up the floor. So if you had a question, you haven't asked it yet, please throw it in the Q&A or the chat. And I'm gonna start with one that I see from Susan about how do you come up with meaningful assignments specifically? How do you determine the course content? So maybe drilling into that assignment piece a little bit more deeply.
Great question. The baseline answer is we start by thinking about who is the student and what their career embedded, what are they experiencing in their workplace? What would help them apply what they're learning in their online class to that workplace most immediately? And then we also try to leave room for student choice within, how you demonstrate that you have learned the skill or the content that's been taught. We don't rely heavily on a lot of paper writing because and especially with, the sort of rise of AI, like it's just becoming harder and harder to use that as a solid measure of a student's learning. So, we try to, and the other thing is we believe that students will use AI in their work in ways that make sense for their work, and we should enable that. Like we shouldn't come in and try to teach a whole different way of doing of adulting, right, or of being a professional in your field. That like if you're the way you're going to demonstrate your learning is by creating a presentation, right? And if in your workplace you're encouraged to use AI in the creation of that presentation, then if I take seriously the idea that I'm trying to prepare you for being a meaningful contributor in the workplace and being a good critical thinker and articulator, that I've got to wrestle with the reality of the world, just like you do, that I can't stand apart from it. So I don't know if that gets to the idea of meaningful. I sort of opened a whole other can of worms. We could have a lot of back and forth about the good and the bad of AI, but we try to create choice and we try to take seriously the realities of the learner. Megan, would you add anything? How do we make meaningful assignments?
Yeah, one of the things that I found really helpful is the course outline that Six Red Marbles has. So there's course outcomes, but then there are weekly learning outcomes, and those are identified. And then as the assessments are mapped out, each one lines back up with an outcome. And I'm gonna forget all the categories, Juanita. There's like demonstrate, engage,
Analyze.
There's some different categories that touch on different elements of Bloom's taxonomy, but when every assignment is linking back to a learning outcome, then there's purpose behind it. But then the creativity of the subject matter expert in instructional design can come in to make it interesting and engaging, but it always has that meaning and purpose. I never saw an assessment that had no outcome aligned with it. It was all for a purpose. And then overall, there's a summative assessment and with scaffolding. So how week over week are the students learning the information and growing the skills that they need in order to be adequately prepared for the summative assessment. So the way it knits together is beautiful. And a lot of our faculty have said they've learned how to be better teachers and instructors by going through this process.
That's an even better answer. Take Megan's answer.
Let's see. I think we've got a lot of requests for examples and exemplars here. We will be following up after this webinar with some resources. One of those will be a checklist for effective accelerated course design, but I'm definitely seeing there's a lot of enthusiasm about the outline and course mapping process. So we'll definitely keep that in mind as, resources we might be able to put together to share at some point.
Maybe it would be helpful for me too to describe that when we realized we needed to move our programs to fully online, I didn't want to start from the assumption of just create all these same courses in an online format. I really wanted to be thoughtful about online program design. And so yes, the course template, super helpful. And there's the standardized course template and the standardized Canvas space with a bunch of things that can't change from program to program or course to course. And then each program also has kind of a slight revision of that so that it's able to hit particular requirements. So for instance, the easiest one to point to is teacher certification, because there's a whole bunch of state standards you have to meet too. So that course outline template is standardized for our TCP, our teacher certification, so that we can make sure we're hitting all those additional outcomes. The other thing we did across our programs is we made a very conscious decision that Whitworth is known for being really relational, and it's kind of part of our brand promise and part of our ethos and our reputation. So we decided that for us, fully online was going to include some synchronous virtual elements that were required, not just optional. So in the first week of your course and the last week of your course, which is usually weeks 1 and 6, you have a 2-hour Zoom with your instructor and all the other students. And we really try not to use that Zoom space for content delivery. It's community building, setting up the expectations of the course, developing and deepening a student's interest in the course based on their prior learning and their connection to the subject matter. And then at the end, final presentation, celebration, synthesis, wrapping things up. So just another example, kind of to the question of how do you create meaningful assignments or learning experiences? We in addition to always thinking about the student, we also thought, if a student is able to earn a degree from us without ever setting foot on our campus, what do we want that experience to look like? And how do we make sure that that's what we're delivering?
That's really helpful additional context. And I think, that question of how do you make it feel like Whitworth, even if you don't step foot on campus, is a really important one, and, kind of what sets this program apart. We're almost up on time here. I did see one question come in. Brooke, I know you spoke earlier to some of kind of the process of the science courses in the Gen Ed program, but it looks like there's a question of just kind of any more. My guess here, and please feel free to clarify, is there's a curiosity for just more with kind of science or math type courses where there's a very you must do this to do this to do this to do this, that the acceleration challenges become more maybe pronounced, and how you handled that.
Well, I hired you guys to figure it out.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So specifically, with accounting courses, or statistics courses, we've intentionally built in some weekly sort of status check-in points, so that the instructor will know what the students are struggling with, concepts that they need maybe more resources on. And that way it's just in time, okay, students are really struggling on this concept. So, they're going to go in and add an announcement or do a little video or add some more resources. And I think that, you really need to do that when it's, a math or science course, because yeah, if you get behind even in 1 week, it's very hard to catch up.
Didn't you guys also, you leaned heavily on some already available learning sources, like, problem sets that exist online and like places where you can go in and practice the skills? Didn't we do some of that for like the stats class?
I know that we're using data sets that are readily available.
Okay.
But I also
Okay.
think that, again, going back to the scaffolding, using the same data set, so like trying to build upon it to
Yeah.
different parts of a summative project can also help with the cognitive load and ensure that they're learning the concepts and they're not having to like get all these different data sets for different assignments from all these different places. Or create their own data sets. They're being provided.
Maybe just to reassure our audience, like my background is not in online education, and I am not of the belief that anything and everything can be taught online. My background is actually in theater. Teaching acting online, that is a difficult nut to crack, right? So I tend to come at these things from like, I don't know what the answer is, but like, let's challenge some of our basic assumptions and let's try to get back to what's essential, and then just think creatively about how we can use technology to assist with delivery, with interaction, with, and I also, one of my graduate degrees was in a very low residency model that did not even have an LMS. There was no LMS. It was more like a correspondence course where you're sending material back and forth with your advisor every week. And so I try to just keep my mind really open about what education can look like and the ways that technology can assist and detract from that.
And ways and the new opportunities that come with the online modality. So with some of the math or science courses, it's really helpful for students to have that content delivery in the online modules so that they can revisit it as many times as they want. If they missed a concept or they're struggling with a concept, they can go back to the learning resource. They can go back to the recorded video and keep watching it until they solidify their skills in that area. And that's hard to do in an in-person class. You can't go back to revisit the class. So so what you said, Brooke, to just thinking differently about what does it look like to do online education, and maybe reframing some of these challenges as opportunities. What actually could work better in an online format?
What could be a bonus? Yeah.
I love that reframing to what does online education add, instead of what can it detract, what does the new format unlock? Are there any other, I think we've mostly covered the questions that I'm seeing. I'm going to make a last call for any other questions people might have. And while I wait, if anyone's typing anything, I do want to just remind everyone that we will be following up with a link to the full recording of the webinar, and we'll also be sharing that accelerated course review checklist. That'll both come in the same email. And if I'm not seeing any other questions come in, I just really want to thank Juanita, Brooke, Megan, so much for your time, for sharing your perspectives. I think we all really learned a lot today about accelerated courses, about online teaching, and about Whitworth. So thank you so much.
And thank you all at Six Red Marbles. We really couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, right.
Thanks for everything.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.